I trust this movement finds all my loving AWA family in best of health in these challenging times of lockdown due to the COVID-19 pandemic. In continuation to the legacy of our alma mater and Alumni Association of Sir J.J. College of Architecture, we have invited many legends from the fraternity as master speakers on the forum.
Greetings to all from Alumni Association of Sir J.J. College of Architecture, Mumbai. This is Architect Ramandeep Singh from AJA, batch of 97. We have always been committed to bring you the best of the industry stalwarts as part of this knowledge series with master speaker episodes to share the varied advancement, specializations and disruptive ideas from subject matter specialists who are all alumni of Sir J.J. College of Architecture. Now, in our constant endeavor to benefit and inspire change, AJA and IDAC, after successfully launching 2 master talks previously, today's talk is from someone who sees lighting beyond its conventional purpose. Whether alluding to architecture or creating illusions in a building, our master speaker today crafts a story to create moments of experience into the psyche and emotions of people who visit these buildings. Proud to present to you Architect Abhay Wadhwa, alumni of Sir J.J. College of Architecture. He is the founder and design principal of AWA Lighting Designers based in New York. He has worked on a wide variety of projects globally and is popularly known as the lighting nomad. Abhay's desire has always been to stay relevant and to focus on work that will impact us in a compelling manner. About 8 years ago, he became strongly involved in researching the latent properties of light and lighting beyond light levels and uniformity ratios. These latent properties of light utilize frequencies and wavelengths of light, color, and sound to harmoniously impact the well-being of people. Now, last year, after many years of research, Abhay also launched Solarium with a U, an audio-visual installation project for improving public health and wellness. This project harnesses the wisdom and knowledge of scientists, physicians, psychologists, musicians, chromatotherapists, and projection artists. AJA takes immense pride to mention that Abhay, our alumni of the batch of 92, completed 2 temporary installations, one in Croatia in September 2019 and the other at Gallery AWA in New York City in December 2019. Abhay's earnest zeal is to serve people with his unique skill sets in lighting, health, and architecture, and his goal is to take the solarium, which is meant to be an open source space in the long term, initially which will show his healing programs, while creating a database of experiences contextualized for the local population through local artists and technicians. To gain better insight into his perspective, just sit back and hear his thoughts in this wonderful knowledge sharing journey brought to you by AJA and IDAC. And yes, do feel free to bring out any queries, questions, or new thoughts for architect Abhay Wadhwa at the end of this session, which will be curated by architect Hiten Sethi. Do sit back, enjoy yourself, and have fun. Thank you.
Hi guys, my name is Abhay Wadhwa. I'm an architect who practices lighting design. I'm based here in New York City, but we have a couple of studios internationally. I'm from the 1992 graduating class of JJ. So it's been good 28 years since I was in JJ last, but I'm very thankful to the organizers to invite me. I'm looking forward to starting a dialogue with several of you who can look at the power of light and where it's going, on your projects, because your projects really come to life if they're lit properly during the day and at night. At night, of course, the sun is not there to compete, so it's a different kind of gestalt that you can compose. But I hope the dialogue that starts here today will help or inspire some of you to look at the different properties of light and see how you can utilize it for the furtherment of your projects and for humanity at large. Thank you again to the organizers for this opportunity, and I look forward to hearing from some of you. If you feel inclined, you can get my contact information from the organizers. My website is awalightingdesigners.com. Also, the book that I've written, the website is contextualizinglight.com. And one of my installations for public health is called solarium.net. Solarium is spelled SOULARIUM.net. Thank you again for listening and for being here, and all the best to all of you in your future endeavors. Take care. Which responded to the context, gave it that color changing, dynamic, pixel mapping kind of function. Now, for those of you who are into pixel mapping and projection mapping, now remember this project was done in 2004 and 5, where we didn't have the softwares that we have now, right? Which makes it easy. So that was Peak Tower in Hong Kong. So then let's move further west to India. Golden Temple, very prominent project in the north of the country in Punjab, Amritsar. The most holy place for the Sikhs in the world. The society that runs the temple complex hired us and asked us to work on the project, and there was this counterpoint of, well, why don't we light it mysteriously? I said contextually that is incorrect, because the context says purity is built into one of the tenets of Sikhism. So you don't want it to be a theater set. This is about sanctity and purity. Then the next thing that came up was, well, why don't we light it with this kind of a light? At that time it was a high pressure sodium. Remember, this is 10 years back. LEDs weren't mainstream as much. And I said to them that if you light this with a high pressure sodium, it's not going to be called the Golden Temple. It's going to be called the Tin Temple, because it's going to look like tin. So the color characteristics of the Golden Temple and highlighting the gold required me to come up with a special spectrum mix of lights. That was contextual. Then we moved further to Dubai, where in the late 2000s we won this design competition for lighting the Sheikh Rashid bin Zayed Bridge, connecting Bar Dubai to Dera. And there, understanding the context, I designed a lighting system that simulated or that responded to the cycles of the moon. That was contextually so strong for the local body, which is the RTA, the Regional Transportation Authority, that over the many entries that came in and over the many boards that were submitted for our entry, they chose to only showcase the lighting concept board, which was about lighting simulating the cycles of the moon. So, because we understood the context, because we understood the relevance of the moon in the UAE, the United Arab Emirates, we were able to come up with this idea. I was able to, I keep cycling between I and we because I believe that we all work together as a team at AWA, but I'm the design principal, so I may switch between I and we, but I really mean us as a group, but me personally as the design principal. So when we did that, understanding the context really took us to the other side over all the other competition entries, and we won the competition. Then you move on to Nigeria, Lagos. Great experience of working on a hotel there. And what was so special about what we did there? Quite simply, we engaged with the local artisans, craftsmen, artists, so that we could, with the architects of course, build a project that really redefined contextual responses in the hospitality industry. What does that mean in terms of the lighting? So the lighting was about an evocative West African experience, is very different than a similar project that would have been built in New York or any other city. That was the intent, that it's different, it looks different. It's not trying to be Singapore in Lagos. It's not trying to be Dubai in Lagos. It's Lagos in Lagos, and proudly so. It's a great group of people, a great country, and just embracing that was really great. Then move over to Haiti in the Caribbean, where we've been doing work before the earthquake, working with the rural areas and empowering them with vocational training with light and building light fixtures that they can then use to study under, and a whole lot of other things. Again, understanding the country, understanding the context helped us design a light fixture, light source that had a battery power with photovoltaics with a water purifying system as well, and a light that could be charged in a communal manner. Very successful project, very well-meaning project. Of course, not a project which unfolded into the deep pockets of Haiti, but we were able to at least start the dialogue there. If we come to New York and you look at our project in the United Nations Plaza called the Arc of Return, which is for a memorial for the abolition of slavery in the United States, again understanding the context and understanding that this memorial is not a science museum which highlights all the atrocities that were done and the slave trade that happened, etc., but that it's an emotional space where we can reflect upon the injustices done and create a moment with light that helps the current and future generations connect with something that they're not really exposed to, on the transatlantic slave trade that happened for over 400 years. And the response was a simple but poignant response with light. So it's not about like how many light fixtures we use. We only use 3 for this whole space, you know. But the context was understood and the dialogue ensued. So the point I'm making is, with this great question that has been asked of me, is like, do you really like put this into practice, or you don't have anything else to do, so you sit down and write essays? Yeah. No, the essays come out of these experiences. You know, they come out, they're drawn out from these experiences that have actually happened, you know. And that's a criticality that has to be understood, that it's not, let's write an essay and let's find a project to implement it in. No, it's the other way around, that we do these projects ever present, understanding that we must question, be the contrarians that we are, be the iconoclasts that we are. We must question and then share that knowledge with the industry at large. What I'm trying to say is that the question is best answered by stating that the essays don't come first, the essays come after the experiences on the projects. And in that, there is relevance to what we write, you know, what we talk about, and the walk that we do, you know, in a big way. Because sincerity to the intent is paramount. The question that is being asked is, what are the approaches that I utilize when I get into a new context? Given the fact that I have built projects in 23 countries, you know, and several of them have been non-English speaking countries. So, having said that, the biggest thing, I said this to a friend who was trying to get work in other parts of the world, I said to them that you have to want to be there. You have to want to do work there, to get out of your comfort zone. You know, if you are happy with your comfort zone, which could be in New York, it could be wherever you are, you know, then you're not going to enjoy stepping out of your comfort zone as much. I personally get off on stepping out of my comfort zone. Having said that, you know, that you really want to do this, and that will impact how the projects will unfold, because that's how you will engage with the local people. Having said that, understanding the context, oh my God, context again. No, really, understanding the context, what does that mean? What can my contractor deliver? What can my supplier deliver? What kind of installation practices do they follow? How do they run the wires? Is there a control system that they're able to use? Do they understand how that all works? Right? What are the compatibility issues between fixtures supplied and voltages and drivers? What are the compatibility issues between, I mentioned that earlier, but the skill sets. If they can't do it, or if they don't know how to do it, you can do one of two things. Do an outreach program where you sit down with them and do a day-long workshop to explain to them how it's done, or change the design. Unless you want your project elements to look not too good, which nobody wants, right? The point I'm making is, understanding the lay of the land is super important. That's on the professional side. Then there is that whole personal inquiry into what makes the people there tick. When I was working in Haiti, or when I was working in the Dominican Republic, understanding what drives them becomes important. Sometimes it's just a show of pride, but very often it's about doing something for the society at large. Understanding that, having meals with them, getting invited to their house, going to their house for a meal, that's a good sign. If they invite you to their house for a meal and you have a few drinks with them and you eat food with them, break bread with them, get to know the family at large, it makes a hell of a difference. If you get invited again, that means you had a good meal and that you have started a good relationship. If they don't invite you again, then you need to loosen up or do something, because generally speaking, most parts of the world, when you go to their house, they will invite you again. Some of them would even offer you to come stay with them. That's the magic of being able to dive deep into the local culture. Dive deep. Don't skim the surface, because skimming the surface will only get you that in terms of your responses. Superficial, surface-based responses. Dive deep into the culture, their foods, their music, their people, the families, the way things flow, the energies that flow through. Your responses with lighting will be that much better. You would become an important contributor to the project, even from an architectural standpoint. The architects would want to know, hey, what do you think about this space? Hey, what do you think about what happens in that city? Because guess what? You spend an extra 2 days just walking the streets and experiencing the culture. The experiencing the culture is food, music, architecture, art, poetry, movies, music, all of those things. So I love diving deep. I dive deep and I come up as a new person, having learned all these things, having shared all these things. And a lot of my professional existence has been about those kind of relationships. So, 2 angles to it. The professional angle, where we do workshops, where we do these questionnaires, where you kind of you got all these points. And then there's a personal part of it, that you really should want to be there. If you have a problem with mosquitoes or traffic or honking, you should rethink. Adventure, if you like adventure, if you like reinventing yourself by diving deep and coming up like a richer person, then it works out. And I couldn't choose. They call me the lighting nomad, because I've got some sort of a nomadic existence, which my base is New York, but I travel a lot. You're open, you're non-judgmental, you're just embracing them for what they are, and then giving your professional opinion on how to make it better. We are back another day to discuss an important distinction that we have developed over the years in lighting historical buildings. We call it the world of illusion versus the world of allusion. The distinction is that do we wish to create a lighting design response that alludes to the architecture, or willfully create illusions that are then superimposed onto a willing architecture. So to elaborate on the point, the world of allusion understands the historic nature of the building, the materials. There's a concept to it, in terms of how is it that you want the building to be seen at night, because it has historic significance in the local culture and in the local context. Conversely, the opposite of that is creating illusions, which is projection mapping, colored lights, moving projections, not just mapping. Of course, all of that is possible in this day and age with the technology essentially driven by LEDs. So the choice that is made whether we allude to the architecture or create illusions, then becomes a mirror to the culture and context of the site. There are certain projects where use projection mapping and technology because there wasn't much to light. However, there are certain beautiful projects, like you can see the Smile building that we have done in Mumbai, where we picked up the details, and the churches that we've done here in New York, historic chapels, the Golden Temple, where we're alluding to the architecture. We're not creating an illusion. You know, my famous anecdote in 2010 when we were doing the Golden Temple was that somebody else came and said, let's create a theatrical set, you know, and create these illusions of how, you know, a mystical this place is. And in round one of our conversations, I referred to this conversation as well. Really, the project is not about creating illusions, but alluding to the magnificence of the material that's used, the details that are used. So in talking about the world of illusion versus allusion, I want to illustrate some more points utilizing two of my projects. One is the Church of Assumption here in New York, New Jersey, and the other is the Zara Ismail building in Mumbai. These both required us alluding to the amazingness of the architecture. The details were all there. The point was that why would I take these beautiful details and embellish them with color or special effects? The architecture was giving us that. So there are certain places where we have to hold ourselves back and really examine it from what is appropriate for the occasion and for the architecture. We have had moments where we have actually spoken the client out of doing color changing on beautiful buildings because there was no requirement, there was no need for it. The building itself was so beautiful. And in that, we live in the world of allusion. Both the church and the Zara building had amazing details. So what we were doing was, in alluding to the architecture, we were picking up the details, almost like a fine artist who's just painting light onto the building. But that would put the building too much in silhouette. So then you have to kind of give it some sort of a fill, some sort of a, you know, the phrase is the umbra penumbra of light, you know, and shadows. Essentially, the shadows have to be managed, but silhouettes have to be managed as well. So it's poetry that's kind of cast with light in time and not really relying on color changing. Then we move to the world of illusion. We have done a few projects, quite a few projects, including Peak Tower in Hong Kong and the Solarium in Croatia. These are illusions. You know, we have done many malls, etc., where we have created illusions again. There are illusions that we are creating for selfie moments. You know, that's the world we live in. And sometimes the architecture becomes subservient to the requirement of visual excitement. The downside of doing that ad nauseum or doing it on every project is these kind of lighting moves are what I call flash trash. You know, that it's not really something that I would want to see, you know, 6 months later, 3 months, maybe even 1 month later, I'll be bored of it, because what we were doing was just an applique of pigmentation onto a building architecture, but there was no analysis. There was no deeper content. There was no deeper messaging. It was just, let's make it pink and blue, or let's make it, what do they do for Valentine's? Make it red. You know, let's make it red, white, and blue on the 4th of July, and so on and so forth. The content is not more than that. And that is where sometimes the world of illusion would fail. Sometimes it's for a certain amount of time can be a success, especially if you're trying to sell more clothes or get more footfalls in a mall or in an amusement park. There it works. So the question at hand, as lighting designers and practitioners, is where do we allude to the architecture or make illusions? Every historic building begets that question. On that note, thank you for listening, and till the next one, we'll see you soon. Today we're going to talk about how lighting impacts our civic realm, our public spaces, and what is our civic intent. It's a new field of utilizing light to create an evocative space for the public realm. What we are saying is that light doesn't have to have a premium, especially for public spaces, where people at large are enjoying the space, where the footfalls are not for one family, not just for one family and their friends, which is what you would have in a big residential project, but for thousands, hundreds of thousands of people or millions of people. That motivates us, because then the impact of good light can be felt by everyone. In an examination of light through history, what you would find is that light has been unfettered since inception. We just depended on the sun and the moon and the candles and the fire and so on. Then when we went to the age of electric light, right? I don't call it artificial because it's just electric light. It's not artificial, it's still light. It just comes out of electricity. When we came to that age of electric light, people started putting a premium on good lighting. Then the lighting manufacturers got involved, other vested interests got involved, and suddenly public spaces in many parts of the world did not or could not have great lighting. So what we are saying is that lighting for public spaces should be given premium importance because it impacts millions of people. On a trip to Haiti after the earthquake, we've been doing work in Haiti from before the earthquake. What I found was very interesting, and then that impacted the work that we did after that, is that the public spaces, especially opposite the presidential palace, what used to be a public park was now a place where people had to live because their homes had been destroyed. But I asked a question of my local host. I said, what was this park used for? Because there were pathways everywhere. So it wasn't like what we would see in the United States, that is a big baseball field in the middle, or a soccer field, or a football field, and then you'll have beaches around. This was just pathways and lights. And my host said, well, this is where the kids came to study at night before the earthquake, when it was a park. And I found a certain beauty to this example, in that light was being used freely to educate the masses. The city provided it. Became a turning point in my analysis of how I want to do public spaces. But understanding the significance, you can't take it lightly. It's not somebody's backyard or somebody's little estate up in some gated community where only a few people can get entry. This is for everyone. Then you take this civic intent onto master planning for cities, for towns, for big areas. And we feel that if you really wish to give the population access to all these spaces, more than just sunrise to sunset, then light clearly plays, electric light clearly plays a very important role. I mean, that's kind of Captain Obvious stuff. But what for us was important is that there is one which has just put street lights, and say, here, I gave you lux levels and foot candles, right? And then there's another where you use light as a catalyst for community, where people are interacting with each other because interacting with each other better because of the lighting, that there is safety and security for all parts of the population, you know, children, women, older people, everybody feels safe and secure because of the lighting that we have created, which is not about just putting street lights and foot candles and lux levels. It's really about an analysis of where the footfalls are, where the photonic energy should go, and then creating a master plan that ties everything together so that the city or the town can actually maintain it over the life of the project without making it boring and one street light everywhere. You know, you can have different scales to the light. We have used that successfully. We did a project in Mexico, which was a big public park, and it worked very well to use the different scales. Very well appreciated. Again, not in the book because we had to take many of our projects out. So on that note, light is just not a light bulb or your reading lamp or your overhead, you know, downlights or office lighting, etc. There is so much more that we can do with that in the civic realm. Not just facade lighting. You know, everybody wants to light facades. I referred to this in round one, where, you know, it's the building envy. You know, my building is better lit than yours. You know, that helps in some ways. There's some civic pride and tourism and safety security issues, but it's not. It's an applique of light. It's not creating a fabric of light, you know, that people can wade through, people can immerse themselves in, utilize that to know their neighbors better, engage in conversations. So, great amount of power that we can unleash, almost unleash, and I love that word, unleash, power of light onto the masses if we do it right. On that note, thank you for listening. Until the next time.
Hi, Abhay. That was wonderful. I mean, elaborate thing, 32 minutes, I think, continuous. It has made me more interested. Next time, I will request you to start with your some case studies also. I think your whole grasp of the whole thing is fantastic. We have too many things we need to take home and rethink about the strategies. But I had just snatched away this opportunity to interview you, you know, because you were the person who racked me in my first year in Sir J.J. College of Architecture. I mean, you were in 1988, I think, yeah. And what he and I remember the time when during monsoons, I remember on the central stage, I was new and we were told after 7 days, there are two people you need to be really scared about, and one is Abhay Wadhwa. So you really take care of this guy. And there he was sitting with Rajan Bhatt and, you know, pulling everybody's leg. And in rains, he made a stand and so on and so forth. Anyway, I had lovely memories about you. I think every day I grew with you during in those 5 years. I think we had something to take over. And I always wondered Abhay Wadhwa in 1987 to the Abhay Wadhwa now. How has been this journey been? I mean, can you share your journey with us?
Um, Thank you, Hiten. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, perfect.
Perfect, super. So, first of all, I have no recollection of what you just referred to. So, I think I'll just leave it at that.
Okay.
But really, it's wonderful that you and Aja have organized this. It's been a long time since I was able to give anything back to my alma mater, where, the journey was tremendous. The journey was tremendous for me. I have to clearly state that I met JJI. It's post, like, down the road, who was junior to me. We talk about the resources at JJI being this, that, and the other thing, and I tell them that look at the breed of leaders that JJ has created, in spite of the resources, right? I mean, you're one of them, and then you have so many names. I mean, there's so many of us who are really doing amazing work. And so I keep reminding them that it's not probably that the lights don't work in the studio or your computers or whatever. It must be the chai at the workshop.
Yeah, I remember that.
You know,
Sitaram.
so those memories are special, and I really thank you and Bobby for doing this, because it's really critical to share with the current generation, or the younger generations, that the world that we live in, the exploration of our zeitgeist, the relevance. Zeitgeist in Sanskrit or Hindi is called Yug Chetana, which is the awareness of what's going on in our times. And how do we as designers and as designers, whether you're architect, you're a lighting designer, etc., how do we contribute? So just very quickly, because I know we have limited time, my journey, as some of you who were my contemporaries know, that I was very rarely after my third year in college, because I was doing set design, production, theater, etc., etc. Then I had then of course you do the traditional route of like doing your internships, etc. But I was always wanting to do sound and light. That's what I wanted to do in architecture. Now, just as a quick sidebar, does anyone know when was the first time that JJ won any cultural trophy outside JJ?
Malhar 89, is it? Or
88 and then 89 again.
Yeah.
And that time was a huge deal, because till 87, JJ used to end up with negative points because people wouldn't show up. And then suddenly we came in and we won 4 out of the 6 trophies.
Right.
And we wrapped everything up. Right, there was a huge deal for JJ, because we were only a small little school compared to Xavier's, who's our neighbor, and compared to Elphinstone, and compared to all these other big schools. But the reason I'm sharing that with you is, again, going back to that, there is something in the DNA of that space. It's powerful, right? But it put me on a track of going into theatrical applications, or just looking at light as perception, as form givers for architecture. One of the first books that I read was a book by William M.C. Lamb, who I was very fortunate to meet later in Boston when I was working in Boston, was Perception and Lighting as Form Givers for Architecture. Changed my life, right? Then I did my undergraduate thesis in a connected topic. I was, of course, still not sure if I just wanted to do lighting. I wanted to do sound and light in architecture. Went to the University of Southern California for building sciences, and you get there coming from Mumbai, where Mumbai teaches you that you know everything, right? Which is not true, because it makes you a 22, 23-year-old kind of like, yeah, I know this. No, you don't. And I came to USC, and I realized that, I came to the Masters of Building Sciences program. Then I really needed to learn a lot more, because whatever I knew was captured in one class at the graduate studio, right? Then from there, I moved to the Lighting Research Center, which is where I did my master's in lighting. I've been teaching there since 2003, and I've had I opened AW Lighting Designers in 2002. So then, 10 years, not even 10, but 2009 or 10, right after the crash, the crash here and the stock market crash here.
Yeah, 2008.
Yeah, I had this whole conversation about, okay, Abhay, how many millions of square feet do you have to do before you can go back to reminding and just working on how do you really contribute? Is anyone going to give a damn about another mall, another project, another, Ubora Tower or a World Trade Center or whatever? I mean, tall high rises that we have done all over the world. What do you really contribute? What do you have to show for it? It's not, I mean, I was too young to talk about legacy at that time, 10 years ago. Well, I'm still young, but the point is, the point is that the legacy part wasn't the question. It was more about, am I able to utilize my time for the benefit of the profession, for humanity. So I started focusing in about 2011-12 on what are the latent properties of light, because foot candles and lux levels, as I said again and again, it's used so often. It's like, how much light do you have? It kind of becomes a measure of your aptitude. One, how much light do you have? How much light as a lighting designer can you provide? And second, can you show me a rendering, right? Those are the two things that come up all the time. And I say to first, how much light can you provide can be done by software. You don't need me. You don't need a lighting designer for the most part, but it can be done by software. Now show me a rendering. It's like, well, that doesn't mean that the design has any significance in the big picture because you did a pretty rendering, right? Just doing a rendering doesn't mean you can get the project built.
Absolutely.
It doesn't mean you can get the project built. It's just a rendering, getting the project built was really the issue. So what I started doing at that time is that realigning our project directions towards projects of social relevance, wherever we can. Now, having said that, we still have to pay our bills, right? So we would, of course, work on projects which were compelling or try to infuse poetry into it. That was a big thing with my team also, is that I would just constantly talk to them about how do you infuse poetry in this? Is there poetry in this? Or is this a typical response? So then the projects, as I started kind of focusing intently on wanting to work on projects of social relevance, that's what came to us, whether it was master plans for cities where they wanted poetry infused, and I think somewhere along the line, there was a journalist in Canada who called me the poet of light, which I kind of still.
Wow, that's good. Yeah.
Hey, it's great. It's journalism.
So nomad poet. I mean, I'm just getting.
That doesn't make me a better lighting designer. That's just terminology. I think what I'm trying to tell the students who are listening is that you have to really ask the question: how do you stay relevant? How do you stay relevant? I mean, are your responses actually making any difference?
Yeah.
Is anybody going to give, any hoot about it in 5-10 years? Now, I just want one quick thing, and then I'll hand it over to you. That life-changing event for me was that about 10 years ago, with a person that has mentored me for years, is a landscape architect called Paul Friedberg. He lives here in New York now. He's 89. God bless him. He's amazing. And he told me a story that in the 70s, when he was at the, right at the top of his profession, that this group was put together as a think tank. And one of the speakers shared with the group of 20 architects, landscape architects, interior designers, a list of 20 names, right? And in these stalwarts of the industry, they could only recognize 2 out of those 20 names, right? Yeah. Now, those 20 were the biggest architects and designers in the United States in the 30s. So within 40 years, nobody remembered them. So the point is that the biggest designers, the names, the fame, nobody remembered them. Yeah. So what do you contribute? That was the question that kept coming up, is that how do you contribute? So I'll stop there. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think you're right. The meaningfulness, I think, gets you in actions, and your actions get you in legacy. I mean, that's how the things move. So there's an interesting question which I think Sandeep Shikre posted, that it is always advisable to have well-thought master plan for all built environments, such as we normally have a common master plan of landscape wayfinding, infrastructure, etc. for sectors and precincts. As a lighting designer, do you think it's advisable to have harmonious and well synchronized external lighting strategy for districts or streets? Can you enlighten us about lighting master plan?
That's a great question. That's a fantastic question. But just a very quick note before I answer Sandeep's question is that the 4 videos that you saw are extracted from 15 recordings that have been done on my essays over the past 6 months. So the other 11 are going to be released. So I mean, some of you may be wondering that how did he change from a white shirt to a blue sweater? Because these are recordings that have been done previously. And the last part, the fourth recording that was shown, actually almost answers Sandeep's question, because I didn't know Sandeep was going to be asking this question, but it's a great question. It's how do you actually make an impact in the civic realm, right? And in the civic realm, we have done master plans for precincts in Dubai, for a city of 100,000 in Saudi Arabia. We've worked on the master plan for Akshardham in New Jersey. We have done a few master plans that are ongoing, and in South Asia. And the point that we keep infusing in that is that, first of all, you have to understand the context. Like if it's the Akshardham in New Jersey, the idea is that it is a reverential site. It is a reverential site where you're trying to utilize light as a master planning tool to create reverence, divinity, right? Different than if you were doing a master plan for a city in Saudi Arabia, which is for 100,000 residents for an oil company, right? Which will be different than the precinct that we did in Madinat Al Arab in Dubai. But the point is that what we use is the wavelength of light, which is 10 to the power of minus 9, right? It's nanometers.
Yep.
So the wavelength of light to 10 to the power of plus 5, which is meters, which means that it's basically the city, right? So there has to be cohesiveness between 10 to the power of minus 9 all the way to 10 to the power of plus 5. That's the range that you want to utilize and harmonize, So and you issue parameters, and that's the paradigm that we've been exploring, and techniques, as the title of this talk, is that we issue parameters saying that in this kind of a situation, this is what you should be doing. But really the driver is, how do you make it as a catalyst for community? That's the driver. How do you make people's lives better after dark, and during the day, make it harmonious with the architecture, the architectural intent that all of you in the architecture community, design. How do we actually infuse it with a value add that makes it even more compelling?
Yeah. I think in one of our projects which you did for one campus development, you actually explained me about the hierarchy of lighting which needs to be adopted for streets and the main roads and the avenues, and I think that's the kind of process which we followed, and it was quite a successful model which was created later on, and so on. Now, with this COVID-19 happening, so what do you think? What will lighting play an important role in the wellness sector?
Okay, so that's a great question. Thank you, Hiten. Now, here's the irony of things, right? That in September of 2019, I launched Solarium after years of research. Right? You guys should check it out. It's online, and I can send you the Vimeo link. It's password protected, so I'll have to send you the Vimeo link. And that was September 2019. I did not know that COVID was coming, right? And right before that, like 3 years before that, I started speaking about the UVC, germicidal light, right? Those were the two things that kind of were almost predictive in a way. It sounds too heavy, but it was funny how it worked out, because funny for me because I'm just sitting there going, wait, I was just talking about this, and I just did this, and now we really need this, right?
Yeah.
So the UVC germicidal light is a light fixture that I've been we are in the process of patenting it. We have three other patents, and that's been a big part of our direction. Is contribution to society is done by doing designs and then patenting it or copyright protecting it, because then you can safeguard your interests as well. Otherwise, how that unfolds. I mean,
Yeah.
but the COVID-19 story was very interesting. That I did this, the first installation in Croatia was called "You Are the Miracle," right? And it was not saying that I'm treating you for anything, because people don't like to be told that they have a problem, right? They don't like to be told that you're depressed, that you have post-traumatic stress disorder, or you have anxiety, or nobody wants. If I went up to say somebody and say, all your symptoms are that, I think you need to do something about your depression, they'll tell me to get lost here. It's like, who are you to tell me
Yeah.
anything?
Yeah.
I'm not a doctor. You know. So what I say is that you are the miracle. Let's celebrate you. The fact that you were, one out of the so many sperm that met the egg and created you, that alone is a miracle already. I don't know what is it, 30 million, sperms that only one made it. So being born, was is a compelling moment of recognition in this human form. So the point is that we started developing this program that you could go in for 18 to 20 minutes, 5 minutes before and a few minutes after, and we would treat you using wavelengths, frequencies, color, and Ramandeep mentioned something about it at the beginning too. And we feel that under COVID, there's one that is you're killing the germs, right? That is UVC germicidal light. Everyone's talking about it, it's mainstream now. And the other is your mental health, a communal health. I mean, in the West, I mean, if you were out here in New York, in the boroughs, and you're in Brooklyn or Queens or New York City, whatever, you know, there is a great amount of loneliness, especially in these times, because you can't meet anyone.
Yeah.
You're self-quarantined or you're isolation or in India lockdown. So what we said was that what if we were, when we come out of this, what if we were to create communal spaces, right, where people could come and attend a free, no ticket, no charges, right, public health, a free 30-minute thing that plays through the night, right? So you can
Yeah.
book seats with an app, and then so yeah, so we've been very intently focused on how can we use light.
Yeah, I think light therapies are being
Yeah,
experimented big way everywhere. I think in every
yeah,
sector.
yeah,
So so
exactly.
so and
Mhm.
I also heard a story. Somebody told me that there's an anthology which is coming up called Contextualizing Light, which is a
Yes,
18 essays collection of your experiences and your involvements in various
yes,
things. So tell
yes,
us something about that. I think it's going to come on Amazon now and next month or
yes,
some. Tell
yes.
us something about that.
Sorry, I forgot to mention that. Thank you, Hiten, for reminding me.
Yeah.
So in about 10 years ago, I said, I've been writing all my life in terms of grad school and post that, and before blog was there, we were writing articles, and the question was ever present, is that how do you actually create scholarly work, or at least what we would like to call scholarly work, that is relevant to examine our zeitgeist, the Yug Chetana, as we call it, like zeitgeist, right?
Yeah.
So, so then there was a temptation about 7 or 8 years ago when a publisher approached us here in New York saying, "Hey, you've done enough work now. Why don't you just publish a coffee table book?" You know, Everyone's going to buy it. It's going to be a big fat book with all these colorful images. And initially, the temptation was there, and then I turned it down because I didn't think we were contributing enough. Just by showing our pretty pictures of our projects. Because the dialogue was evolving. So many years later, we rekindled it. Like 2 years, 2018, we rekindled the whole process, and finally, we have the book called "Contextualizing Light" coming out. It's going to be on Amazon on June 9th. So we feel that it's a relevant work because the last time somebody wrote a book on the lighting zeitgeist and how lighting impacts architecture, not technology, not that LEDs and make it smaller, make it more colorful, make it that, not that. How do we think about the big picture here? You
Yeah.
know, and the last time somebody wrote about this was almost in the early 90s. Then people just got seduced by this technology move, and nobody was talking about, okay, but does it really make sense? How do we use it so that it's helping people, not just making another fixture that's like, I mean, that conversation I think we had many years ago was that the clincher for me in that I have to write this was when a manufacturer came to me and said, "Sir, look at this. I'm
Totally right.
replacing all the fluorescents, right, with an LED tube." So I'm like, wait, so you're telling me that you took this technology, this flat LED technology, you rolled it up like a joint, and you're putting it up in a fluorescent fixture. And that's how you're embracing, the new technology. It's ridiculous. You're
Yeah.
losing the plot. I mean, for the first time in the history of humanity, we have light sources that are not point sources, right? And I'll expand on that we have surfaces that are lit. I can use an organic light emitting polymer and the whole surface is lit. For the first time in humanity's history, architects are not using a T square and a set square and working
Yeah.
on, what did we call them? The drawing boards, the
Yeah.
inclined things we had, you know, we're not using that,
Nice.
we're using trace. So what's the lighting requirement? You know, and that's the point here, that this book is about exploring all these things that have been handed to us. Oh, you must have this much light. I mean, the example that I use in that is in the 50s, everybody who knew anything about lighting would say, well, we need 1,000 lux. Okay. Then the oil crisis came in the 70s. Then, you know what, let's make it 500 lux. Overnight, it went from 1,000 to 500.
Yeah.
Then 10 years later, they said, you know what, 500 is too much. Let's do 300.
Sure.
So you went in 30 years to 30% of the light that you were recommending. So I'm asking the question, who came up with these numbers anyways? You know, so why not challenge it? And that's what this book is about. When did shadows become bad? When did darkness become bad? Now there's a thing in the Vedic scripture, tamasoma jyotirgamaya. Okay, so we must go towards light, as light being symbolism for knowledge and awareness, right? But it doesn't mean that you should have brightness everywhere. There's nowhere which says that you must go into a room that is uniformly lit, no shadows, no nothing, because you're scared of darkness. Well, what's going to happen if there's a little darkness? You're
Yep.
not going to have like demons come out and eat you up there. So something happened. Darkness became bad somewhere. And I'm asking the questions in the book so that the future generations or the current generations are able to ask the relevant questions. That's really it. I'm not giving you solutions everywhere because that's just my opinion, and my opinion is my opinion. It's not, it's not law. So it's just that it's a dialogue that must start, and I'm very happy that my whole team has helped me tremendously in all my offices, just working on the book, documenting it. And the publisher in California, the book is now down to 424 pages. We were up at 550 initially,
Wow.
which is the 424 is a good size, and it's on Amazon. Contextualizing light. It's also the website. You can go there and order it. So thank you, Tain, for reminding me. I almost forgot.
Yeah. So just we have finished with time, but before we close down, I'd like to say what I've learned and read in spirituality is that in the darkness you shall find light. And I hope your designs give us all that kind of consciousness and the satisfaction and peace what we normally look for. And I wish you all the best for all your endeavors, and may God bless. And thank you for honoring Alamate and being a part on this platform. We look forward for more meets with your case studies again. Thank you, Abhay.
Thank you, Tain. Thank you, Bobby. Thank you, everybody. It was fantastic.
Thank you, everybody. And that was Abhay Wadhwa, my what do you call inspiration during college time, and we look forward for such pleasant moments once again. Thank you all. Have a good day. Bye bye.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. Bye.